Hello everybody, it is Marty McConnell, the Off-Grid Gecko here, and today I'm going to be talking about junk guns. Stay tuned. No. Hello everybody, it is Marty McConnell, the Off-Grid Gecko here, and today I'm going to be talking about junk guns, and I'm going to be saying some things that might ruffle some feathers with shooters and non-shooters alike, so stay tuned, join the discussion, and let's talk about junk guns. That was pretty decent. Okay, so what is a junk gun? This is an example of a junk gun. This Phoenix Arms HP22A 22 caliber pistol. All right, the magazine on it is very small, and this thing is very finicky because of the way it's manufactured and all the extra safeties. These are manufactured in Ontario, California, so because it's manufactured in California, it's got all these silly little safety mechanisms all over it. It makes it kind of a bear to use, but it makes for a good example of this, and it's the only weapon that I have that really falls into this category, so that's what I'm going to be using as an example. What is a junk gun? A junk gun is, generally speaking, a very low-cost gun that is manufactured in a way that makes it easy to make it low cost, i.e. this one, for example, is the frame and the slide are actually both crafted by casting zinc as opposed to other alloys, more expensive like aluminum or some kind of steel or forging steel or whatever. It's got a steel lined barrel that runs about 2-3 inches, something like that, maybe 2.5. It's not very long. And about 2.5 inches. And this little girl right here, she cost about $150, brand spanking new. The mags are cheap. I'm not sure how much I paid for these. I did spend a little extra and fitted a couple of them with this bottom little pinky grip, and just makes it fit better in the hand. And of course, this weapon's been cleared, and this magazine is empty. I'm using the magazine for demonstration purposes because the safety interlocks on this weapon don't allow it to function properly without a magazine inserted in. So that's just one drawback of this pistol. Now, this also includes derringers or any kind of cheaply manufactured firearm that is easily accessible to somebody who maybe doesn't have the means to go out and purchase a real self-defense handgun. Now, what is a real self-defense handgun? So the junk gun thing, this actually crosses party lines. It crosses gunner versus non-gunner lines, because even serious shooters kind of look down on these weapons and they think, oh, those are crap, they're manufactured badly. And sometimes they're right. Like, there are companies that make these and they're just total trash. This little guy right here, I like this gun so much, I actually bought a second one because I'm not being endorsed by Phoenix Arms in any way, but this comes with a lifetime warranty, and it's just an amazing little 22 pistol. It is what it is. It's a fun plinker. It's a range toy. That's why I bought it, but I also carry this for hunting small game, and I have been known to carry it in a self-defense purpose. So when people talk about banning junk guns, what they're talking about is putting a ban on the manufacture and sales of these types of weapons, and they classify them very broadly across the board. So this probably qualifies to, I couldn't actually find a list of actual firearm manufacturers anywhere, so if you have such a list where it just lists like what models specifically, say, the Biden campaign's trying to put on their ban list, let me know. Link it in the description below. Would be cool. But generally they're small caliber, cheap, whatever. This is a 45 caliber Springfield Arms XD 45, one of the original XD pistols, and this is widely regarded as a typical self-defense firearm. So this is made by a reputable company. The body of it here is polymer. The the slide's made out of steel, and it's a striker fired pistol, kind of like a Glock. And it also has a couple safety mechanisms, but to anybody familiar with a 1911, it's not going to be too much of a stretch to be able to operate this guy properly. It's got a takedown lever in the front, a little slide lock in the back. It's a little bit different, but ultimately the same manual arms for most pistols, and this particular one is fitted with tritium glow night sights. So altogether, brand new. If you put this package together, it's probably around an $800 firearm compared to $150 firearm. The 45 caliber, I think almost everybody would agree, is better for self-defense. It has more penetration power. It has better ballistics. I am really sorry for saying a lot. I may have been drinking. So I'm going to go back to my normal so instead of I'm going to try and transition back to so. That seems to go over well. But anyways, good self-defense pistol, junk gun. So those are the differences between the two. Now, why do people want to ban these? The general idea is because these are so cheap, they're easier to be accessed by criminals and specifically the type of criminals that are going to go out and commit gun violence. There may be something to that. So if you want to, like, if you're just in a heat of passion or you're enraged and you're an otherwise normal law-abiding citizen that doesn't have a track record of violence, yeah, technically you can go into a pawn shop or a gun store if they sell them and pick up something like this, just a very low cost. Tell them you want a self-defense gun and you can get whatever the cheapest thing is in the cabinet and then go do your dirty deed. That's certainly possible. That's also a premeditated crime, and usually there are signs leading up to that something's going to happen. So hopefully by that point restraining orders are in place and that person's being watched by the police. However, enforcement of these laws is not the best, and just because someone doesn't have a criminal history doesn't mean they can't start one anytime. You know, they say never too young to start. That said, I think for most of what we think of as criminals, like people that have already been convicted of multiple felonies, it's going to be just as hard for them to get this as it is for them to get this. Not because of the cost, but because passing a NICS check, if you have a felony background, is damn near impossible. So when you go in to buy your gun, you fill out this form. I can never remember the number. I think it's 4473. And the gun store calls the FBI and basically enters your data in this background check database. And it usually takes them 20 or 30 minutes to run through your stuff, get back to the FFL and be like, yay, nay, or this is going to take a little while longer, so we're going to put them on hold for a couple days. And then you have to wait till the check comes in before you can actually pick up your weapon. So if you are a convicted felon, you're not going to pass that check. There's some kind of study going around lately because this year the FBI has been overloaded with these requests that maybe a couple people that otherwise wouldn't be able to purchase a firearm have been allowed to. I don't know, but banning the firearm is not going to stop that person from picking anything else out of the shelf. Especially if you're talking about a hardened criminal, it's not going to be hard for them to scare up $300 or $400 and get, you know, a Taurus or something better to do their deed with. They're still going to pick the cheapest thing in the cabinet, even if it's $300 or $400. That's just my opinion. That's where I'm going with that. But what I really want to talk about is placing a ban on junk guns. Also, in addition to taking this out of the hands of potential criminals, allegedly, yeah, I've already covered my opinion on that. It also takes this out of the hands of law-abiding citizens who maybe work, you know, they're living week to week, and especially amid COVID-19 and people losing their job and being backed up on rent payments for 6 months or 8 months, and all this stuff's about to hit the fan. You know, say they got to sell their car and they got to walk to work, and the walk home is maybe through a dubious neighborhood. When I think of the poor, I tend to think of East St. Louis because that's kind of in the area where I grew up, and that's what I've seen and I have experience with. There are some places down there at night you don't want to be caught walking down the street. So I can understand somebody living in a poor neighborhood like that where crime is a little bit higher than average. wanting to have something for personal defense, and maybe they can't afford a 45. Maybe they can't afford to train them with a 45. So this little girl right here is loaded with the 22 LR cartridge. It's a standard for over a century, well over a century. The humble little 22 LR. And this was originally designated as a rifle round that was fired in small bore rifles. Whereas the 45 ACP was designed specifically for pistol use, and it was also used later in a rifle, the Thompson. The 22 LR is now a popular choice for pistol calibers, not only for junk guns, but for practice pistols. So you can actually get a 1911 chambered in 22 LR that has the same manual of arms as your regular 1911, but it doesn't cost as much when you go to the range to practice. 22s are inherently more accurate because they don't have any muzzle flip hardly whatsoever. They have almost no kick. They're not intimidating for the shooter to fire, and that's just a simple fact. I mean, they tend to be more accurate. Now this little girl right here has a narrow, you probably can't tell from there, but I got my 45 here and the little HP. This has a very narrow front sight, and it's got a very narrow slot by comparison on the rear sight. So even though it has a shorter length between the front sight and the rear sight, you're able to produce a smaller sight image when you're looking down the pistol to aim it with this, which makes it inherently accurate. So this doesn't speak to all junk guns. I mean, there's some crap out there, but most of these little small pistols like this are made to be up close and personal anyways. I mean, it's literally point and shoot, or if you're 110 pounds soaking wet little girl walking down the street and somebody's trying to rape you, put this directly into their chest and squeeze the trigger. Like, that's the idea behind this. It's a last ditch resort. This is not for taking criminals out 100 yards away while they're charging at you, which I don't think there's ever a legal reason to do that in the United States. Because you're not going to be taking long shots with this. This is up close and personal. They're cheap to train with. They're cheap to feed, because 22 ammo is about the cheapest you can get. I mean, they don't make ammo any cheaper. Even CCI mini mags, by far one of the best 22 ammo options, are still far cheaper than a 9mm or a 45 or any of the bigger bore calibers. So cheap to feed, cheap to practice with, which means people are going to buy this. They're going to be more inclined to get down to the range and actually practice. I don't know if you've ever been to a shooting range with people that have never shot a pistol before, but when I was training for my concealed carry in Louisiana, I went ahead and went to this class, and we sat through this thing, and then you had to bring a box of ammunition with you, because you're basically gonna, I think we capped off about 50 rounds. It wasn't training. They just wanted to make sure that you're functioning the weapon properly, and that you are, like, the basics of how to shoot and how your weapon works before they give you a little stamp to carry it in your back pocket. And I think I was the only person there that shot a pattern at all at, I think we did it 7 yards, 10 yards, and 15 yards. My pattern at 15 yards was like this. I took the exam with the Springfield here. And everybody else's paper looked like a shotgun scatter plot from 40 yards away. It's just bullets all over the place. People can't aim. There were people that had never taken the slide off of their weapon to clean it. They literally just went into a gun store, bought a gun, and they wanted to carry it in their pocket. And again, for the same reason, you don't necessarily have to shoot well if you're at point blank range. And usually that's when you're going to be in the most dire need of defending yourself, is point blank range. Okay? Everybody likes to think about drugstore shootouts and, oh, what if somebody goes on a rampage? Stuff like that happens, but it happens far less often than a direct attack where somebody's grabbed from behind and either robbed, or their life is threatened, or they get stabbed, or whatever. Like, this offers you a way out. And if you're poor and this is the only thing you can afford, like, I'm not recommending anybody to go out and buy this as a self-defense weapon. Like, if you can afford this, or a 1911, or a Glock, or a Smith & Wesson M&P, or whatever. There's 100 different guns that are much better suited for self-defense than this little guy, but even a 22 Derringer is better than nothing if you're in that situation. The phrase that we use in the gun community is better than a pointed stick. Okay, and we've seen pointed sticks can be quite effective on this channel, but still, carrying a gun for self-defense. So, in my opinion, in short, to sum this all up and kind of get to the main bullet point, it's getting windy. Sum this up, get to the main bullet point here. Classifying all junk guns as being the same. If it's made with zinc, it's automatically out. We're just going to ban any kind of gun that's made with zinc or magnesium or any kind of other silly alloy. Any kind of manufacturing process that allows these to be made cheaply basically takes these out of the hands of some of the poorest people who might need this the most to defend themselves, because their chances of being attacked are higher than yours. Especially if you're a U.S. senator or a high-tier politician, your chances of being attacked are a hell of a lot less than somebody else walking down the street alone that doesn't have bodyguards that are armed following them around everywhere. So it's easy to make that call from that seat in Washington. But I think more often than not, the reputation these guns have is ill-deserved, and the fact of the matter is that these have been used in self-defense. Maybe not this particular brand, I haven't looked up the statistics recently, but a lot of 22s have been used in self-defense over the years. And as far as I know, again, link something in the comments if you have a link to an article that can correct me on this particular point, but any time that a 22 has been fired, hit its target in self-defense, like, the attack has ceased immediately and that person's life was saved. Anytime somebody's ever been attacked and then they turn around and hit their attacker with a 22 bullet to the chest, the attack stops because it's dark out. Your attacker's not going to sit there and trying to inspect what caliber gun you have and what their chances are and what their, how long it's going to take them to lose blood pressure with a bullet directly to the heart and all this other nonsense. They're not worried about that. They don't worry about statistics. Crimes are mostly crimes of opportunity. So if somebody grabs you, attacks you, and then they hear bang and they feel a sharp pain in their chest, I just got shot, that fear factor takes over. Nobody's thinking about the caliber. Trust me. So that's my little rant, is if you ban these, then you're taking away a critical defense point for the poorest people on the planet. So in my opinion, if you're poor and you're in a position where you can't afford maybe a higher quality gun to start off with, then, and this is all you can get, the government's trying to take this away anytime they start quoting junk guns, because this is what they qualify as a junk gun. Now, as I've said, there's different brands, there's different everything, right? So all across the grand spectrum of the board, something solid like a Derringer or a little revolver is probably best. If you're going to buy a cheap gun, generically stay away from automatics, because automatics have enough problems of their own. They tend to jam, they have other problems, which is why some of these higher quality pistols tend to get so expensive, is because a lot of engineering's gone into this to make sure that it's not going to suffer those problems. And I've stovepiped this thing. I've jammed this gun several times. I've never seen a gun that's totally impervious to jamming, no matter what the tabloids and the media would have you believe. Like, I've seen Glocks jam and stovepipe. I've seen M&Ps jam and stovepipe. Like, even my little trusty Springfield here, I think I fired like three or four magazines through this in succession at really high rate of fire at a gun range, and I started getting stovepipes once the barrel heated up. So you can make these fail. Any gun can fail, and automatics have a tendency to fail a little more often than maybe a revolver. And a Derringer is basically like a double barrel shotgun, except very, very small, and it takes, little teensy weensy ammunition. It's still, they lock up tight and they fire and they don't jam because they can't jam. You've got the the rounds are in there. There's no interchange. There's no action working on it. The only action is a hammer hitting the back of the bullet and making it pop. So when you're selecting a pistol, now the HP22A, like, I can vouch for it. I have 2 of these. I've fired over 1,000 rounds, probably over 2,000 rounds through this one right here, several hundred rounds through the other one, and to be perfectly honest, I'm totally happy for the price with how these guys perform. I know that first shot's going to go off without a hitch. Now, after that, if the magazine clogs up, if the gun's dirty, there's other issues, obviously, but for the price, I love the performance that I get out of this thing. I have a lot of fun with it at the range, and it's just like my go-to back pocket rifle or back pocket pistol for stomping around in the woods killing snakes. I definitely would not deter anybody from the Phoenix Arms if that's all you can afford, or if you're buying it to have a plinker. Like, I'd put this right up there with the Ruger Mark III. They're just fun as hell to shoot. For self-defense, probably want to go with the best that you can afford, but you also want to factor in ammunition. Like, go to the range. If you can, try and get instruction from a range officer or like a firearms trainer or somebody. Put a couple hundred rounds in paper. So factor that into the price of your gun. Is, okay, let me go, I'm going to buy the gun. I'm going to buy not 1 box of bullets just so I can load the magazine, set it on the shelf, and forget about it until I need it. But actually go to the range and, like, put some rounds on paper. That's just good general advice. As for junk guns, the only other argument that I've found against these is that they are just as dangerous to the person shooting them as the person getting shot. So they're talking about massive catastrophic failures. So basically, I fire this thing. Let me clear it one more time, you dirty monster. Yeah, this gun will not allow you to clear it unless there's a magazine in the mag well. Imagine that. So if you do get this, you're gonna have to learn to work your way around the safety mechanisms. They're a little weird, but basically a junk gun, the idea is, specifically with an automatic, is you fire the thing, the hammer drops, gun goes bang, slide comes back to chamber another round. Go ahead, and this doesn't have a standard takedown lever either, so the slide's all the way back, and something in here breaks. So instead of stopping and rushing back forward on the spring power to chamber another round, the slide comes back at you and hits you in the face, or the barrel explodes, or any number of other possible outcomes other than, racking another bullet so you can pop another cap in their ass. And you attack his ass. To that, I would say I don't really know. I haven't used every single kind of gun. Like I said, there are degrees of reliability. So something that locks up and only holds a couple rounds, or it just has 1 barrel, 1 round, and you're, 1 chamber, 1 round, no magazine, the simpler the gun design is, the less chance it has to fail you, basically. But also the less rounds you're going to get. So the next step up would be a small revolver, and that would basically, it's all really heavy machinery. The moving parts don't lock up quite so easily. Any slide lock pistol, even the expensive ones, have the ability to fail. Generally, that doesn't involve throwing the slide out of the back, because these are made really, really tough. So the whole idea with inferior quality build materials is that if it cracks, if something breaks, it can hurt you physically, and I'm sure there's some kind of statistic to back that up that it does happen, but it's about the same as, being hit by lightning as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen a gun just explode and fall apart in a way that hurts somebody. I know it happens, but I've never personally seen it happen. And that's pretty much all there is to it as far as that goes. So that would be an argument against it. If you're going to get it, try to get something that's simple, that's mechanical, if you can, that's made out of steel. So don't just go necessarily for the cheapest piece of shit in the cabinet. Like, look around a little bit, ask the gun store clerk about it, like, what are the chances of this blowing up in my face? And even they're not going to know, because they're going to try to sell you something, and they're going to be running off bad stats too. And there's really nowhere you can look up this information. other than hearing from people that have actually had these things malfunction in kind of an explosive, destructive way. But generally speaking, it doesn't happen that often. It doesn't take much money to manufacture a Derringer, or even a revolver for that matter. And small calibers are more affordable, so you can actually practice with them, train with them a little bit, and learn how the gun works. Take it apart, clean it, like, know your shit. But I can't really argue against the exploding thing because I don't have those statistics. But in general, my viewpoint, these should not be banned. What needs to be done, I don't know how you prevent gun crime, but in this country at least, it's not from banning firearms, because that's just an ineffective way to go about things. And most firearms that are used criminally are stolen out of safes or out of houses. So there's the other issue. They're not going to take this if there's 2 Glocks sitting there on the nightstand. Anyways, that sums it up. That's my little rant. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments, and we can maybe start a little discussion down in the comments section, and talk back and forth. I'm just opening this up to debate because I am not the world's expert on this. I just happen to be knowledgeable about a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So ask questions, we'll talk about it, and you guys stay safe out there. Until next time, I'll see you later. And yeah, that subscribe thing and the bell and all that stuff too.